Okay, it's day 90, and I'm going to use the same slides here that I used this morning to explain kind of an overlay now. It was really kind of two presentations in one, and this is sort of part two of the presentation this morning. I use Kwok here to represent, now with ties to Soros, and this will all start coming out, but to represent sort of the drug business, the drug for weapons business. This is kind of the dark CIA going all the way back to Chiang Kai-shek. Drugs for weapons, drugs for weapons, drugs for weapons. You can almost see him calling ships here in New York Harbor, saying, "Come in quickly, we need to get the drugs out to you quickly." He has that background. And I'm not saying he doesn't also deal in China's secrets. He certainly does. But this is the person that Bannon went over to. And the reason why I use Bannon as a symbol of this is he's somebody who really represents the soul of the intelligence community. So it's important. Now, his previous employer here, Mercer, you may have heard of this guy with Renaissance Technologies, and it's very secretive, and he never really says why, and he's always this kind of secret Trump supporter. And he is the guy who's investing in those types of technologies I talked about this morning, making reactors smaller so they can fit into a nuclear submarine. And here we're talking about payments going to Russians, making the smaller snap reactors for applications like mining applications. And what you have to remember here is leopards don't change their spots. Never forget your friends that are the M's, your M friends. Modus operandi, motive, okay? These are the things that repeat over and over again. Michael Morrell will always be Michael Morrell. Up here with the Mercers will always be looking for the inside edge from guys like Steve Bannon who have access to people with the highest level of clearance for investing in technologies. That's just how it works. So excuse the magnifying glass going around there, but I'm narrating to this. This is what I call the Army-Navy game. So think of that game every year that we watched it this year. It was an exciting finish with the Army. Won, I believe, right at the end with a whole bunch of Army people. They were all excited in Frederick, Maryland, where Mark Lambert was making fun of me, kissing Roman Krupnik there along the little canal. Maybe they're celebrating the Navy technology and how good the Army-Navy game has been for them. Even though they lost the physical game, they won the big game. They won the uranium game. We know that is the basis of this whole thing. South Carolina is the basis of this whole thing. And especially when you consider that's the head of the nuclear program, that's the head of the nuclear school, that's where all the fitting out of nuclear ships is, all the advancement and so forth. And then you're going to hire folks and put them into different places like New York and Maryland, spies in Russia to affect those investments. So that's the point I was trying to make this morning. It's really about this pay-to-play Army-Navy game. And Bannon over here was on the Russian side, doing just investing in power, what I would call power, meaning like nuclear power, and applied power. How do you then use that power? So the Navy, I look at it as the power side of the equation. Here are the different reactors we're making. We're getting them smaller and smaller now. And the applied power is really the Army side, which is, hey, let's use this for mining. We could use these things for robotic mining. Food, we can eliminate the whole food supply chain. The biggest problem in the Navy of them having to stop is to feed the sailors, right? You want to eliminate that. And they're always working on ways of making this, robotic, if there's any possible way they could make it robotic. So that's where I was talking about where Bannon sold his soul. And I say down here, where has Bannon gone from Mercer nukes to Kwok opium? It really is kind of saying, hey, I don't want to just do, kind of the Navy power and so forth and applied power, like he sold a goggles set at ZeniMax. And he laundered it through this 24-year-old kid and sold it to Facebook for this $2 billion. Well, if you believe stories like that, you'll believe anything, right? And I can't remember the name of the headset, is ARC something. But that's what you do. You go into these Navy research areas and then you make money. Here I was saying, that it used to take up half the submarine right in the middle of the nuclear power plant. And what they've done in that part of the sub is, hey, let's minimize. with the fuel rods, they keep on trying to reduce the package to where, it's not this big long thing like this long torpedo-like thing, but get it down to the half that size and then a quarter that size. So this is the type of thing that Steve Bannon would have access to and applied to. Now, unfortunately, the video got edited, but what it talked about was that red reactor core spinning these turbines, and see what a large part of the submarine is actually the nuclear power cell. Now, if there's a meltdown here, everyone dies. That's the Kursk incident, right? So they constantly are worried about fire and so forth in this reactor core. The Navy spends a tremendous amount of money and time reducing this power plant area of the reactor, and also trying to come up with things that are safer from fire. I also talked about this SNAP technology, this auxiliary power, which uses a different form, and you can see all the iterations they've gone through with the SNAP. But these are going to be perfect for mining applications. The Russians have used these nuclear thermal converters for years for mining applications, because again, you've got to run out food to people, you got to run out gasoline to people. These things create exhaust if you don't use these type of SNAP devices. You have the same problem in space, where there's no way, the supply line, there's no human supply line that you can use. The Army has taken this idea and this concept, with a lunar module and so forth being a remote mining device, and said, hey, we could do that here. If we could take over the coal mines, for instance, we could mine in our heart's content with these SNAP devices, right? So the Army, I look as kind of more of the applied power, and Lockheed Martin is obviously a key supplier here, but they're the applied power saying, hey, we could go out to this South Dakota mine and mine this thing at night with robots. We don't need many people at all. The difference between an elite and a regular working person is elite people are criminals with better suits. The idea here is they don't care about anybody who is a miner, a coal miner. They'd rather take that coal mine and then mine it for other more rare components. Now, right now, I believe they're trying to get the highly enriched uranium out of the United States right now. And it could be the port of Charleston. It could be the port of Jacksonville. There's supposedly a Russian spy ship that can detect radiation through lead lining setting up there. It could be Norfolk. But again, everything else is expendable. All other rat lines are expendable. We talked a long time with Deep Uranium this morning about this. All of the rat lines are expendable. The kids are expendable. The drugs are expendable. The weapons are expendable. You can make more of any of those. You can't make new highly enriched uranium very easily. So I think it's a better business. And Jeff Sessions has been on that side. He's been on this Navy side with doing these deals in Mobile, doing the deals in the rocket center at Huntsville, Alabama. Again, I say a couple of the with the Russian meetings, a couple of the meetings have been from people from the Redstone Arsenal near Huntsville, Alabama. We've had deaths there of the people running that as well. We've had deaths in NASA in Florida, lots of deaths and so forth, because people that work there see this as a national asset. They don't see this as something that should be marketed through a Chinese spy or through a Russian spy. Someone commented that a lot of Russians were coming into the University of California and taking all of our intellectual property back to China, back to Russia. So Bannon becomes a really interesting face of this kind of modern day Benedict Arnold, where he's not happy enough with doing this old kind of business with Austal, doing the power plants, doing the Navy investments, the different investments and so forth. He needs to go now to the dark side, and the dark side basically offered him more money than he could ever hope for. This Kwok over here offered him more money than he could possibly hope for. And again, Austal is going to be the key for Jeff Sessions, and this isn't going away. And the more we talk about this, and the more we drill down on this, and the more we actually research this, the more Sessions will have to come forward with delivering key documents like this key 4-page memo. The 4-page memo I don't think is ever going to be released. Just from my opinion, it's such a primary document that immediately shows the PP FISA created the PP dossier. There's no arguing it. There's really no arguing it. Again, this was an older model here. This fuel package here was an older model for this NS Savannah, and that was being applied to commercial shipping. It wasn't a success, but that never stops these folks. It's like having a launch, blow up on, at Cape Canaveral. It's not going to stop the NASA scientists. They just say, what went wrong? Let's try again. They're going to do the equivalent of a mission to Mars space program, so the people of the United States can pay for all their research, but they're going to get this right with smaller power plants for these ships.